Okay, story time, but not the cozy one. If you grew up thinking fairy tales are all glitter, moral lessons, and happily ever after, I'm about to ruin that for you. And I'm honestly delighted, because today we are talking about 5 classic European fairy tales in their darker, older forms. The versions that feel less like bedtime stories and more like who approved this for humans. We've got taboo kings, a serial killer sorcerer, Pinocchio going full chaos gremlin, cursed shoes that turn into a literal nightmare, and a story where magic dogs basically overthrow a government. So yeah, this is your warning. If you are eating, maybe pause. If you are sensitive to dark themes, also maybe pause. And if you love creepy lore, welcome home. Alright, let's start with a tale that's basically Donkey Skin's German cousin. And it somehow gets worse. The brothers Grimm have a tale classified in the same category as Donkey Skin. The German title is Allerleirauh, which means all kinds of fur or Thousandfurs. Sometimes it's called many fur or catskin, but it's basically the same taboo premise. A king wants to marry his own daughter. Fun times. The setup. A king's beautiful wife dies. These guys really can't handle losing their haughty wives. She had golden hair and was the most beautiful in the land. On her deathbed, she too makes him promise not to remarry unless it's to someone as gorgeous as she was. Of course, as years go by, the only woman that rivals the late queen's beauty is their daughter. Didn't see that coming, did we? So, Dad drops the bombshell on his daughter that she should become his new wife. The princess, appropriately, is like, absolutely not, that's disgusting, in fairy tale speak. But he's hell-bent on it. So like Donkey Skin, she tries to throw impossible task at him to delay the marriage. She asks for 3 gowns. One as bright as the sun, one as silver as the moon, one as glittering as the stars. Fashion game strong in these stories. And she adds one more demand. A cloak made of 1,000 different animal furs from every animal in the kingdom. Essentially, you must literally skin your entire royal menagerie and all the wild creatures to make me this pimp coat. Then we will talk. She's thinking he wouldn't destroy his whole kingdom's fauna for this, right? That's insane. But remember, we are dealing with insane. The king actually does it. He has his hunters basically kill one of every animal, or collect pelts, which implies killing anyway, to stitch this Frankenstein cloak together. So now, not only he is a pervert, he's like ecological disaster. The resulting cloak is Allerleirauh, made of all kinds of fur. He presents it proudly along with the impossible dresses. Checkmate, princess. This poor girl realizes her death is beyond reasoning. She takes the fur cloak, packs her dresses, sun, moon, stars. In a nutshell, Grimm magic tech, apparently you can fit huge gowns in a walnut shell, neat trick, and runs away in the middle of the night. She ends up in a deep forest where she eventually is discovered by a king from another realm who's out hunting. She's so dirty and disguised in that crazy fur cloak that they can't tell she's a princess. The king's like, what creature is that? Is it human? She's like, just a poor girl, please have pity, I can do kitchen work. So they take her in as a lowly servant in the palace kitchens. Because she won't tell her name, they call her all kinds of fur as a joke, basically furball or something, and make her tend fires and throw scraps to the cooks. She lives like Cinderella in suit, wearing her fur coat all the time, presumably smelling like a wet dog crossed with a zoo. Now, conveniently, this king, the new one, not her awful father, is young and unmarried. He throws 3 balls. These fairy tale princes love a good ball, don't they? On each occasion, Furball sneaks out, cleans herself up, and wears one of her magical dresses. To the first ball, she wears the sunbright dress. Everyone is blinded by her beauty. The king is like, who is that? They dance, sparks fly, but she slips away before midnight. Cinderella vibes, yeah? Second ball, she shows up in the moon dress. King is again, there's my mystery girl. Third ball, star dress. King's determined not to lose her, so he secretly slips a ring on her finger during the dance, thinking, this will mark her. She still manages to run off, but this time in her haste, she doesn't fully change back into her fur disguise. Or rather, she does, but forgets to remove the ring. Next day, the king has a plan to ferret her out. He asks the kitchen to make him soup. Some versions say she insisted on making the soup for him. As she's making the soup for the king, all kinds of thread drops something into it. Depending on the telling, either her ring, or maybe she purposely doesn't season it so he will call for the cook. Anyway, the king finds the ring in his soup. Lots of jewelry and food going on in these tales. He's like, and calls for the cook. The cook's like, oh, the new kitchen girl made it. They drag Furball out, and the king sees the ring on her finger. His ring. He's like, no way, it's you. She throws off her fur cloak and reveals her beautiful self and the golden hair, etc. The king recognizes the dance partner he fell in love with. Instead of confirmed, he proposes. She then reveals her true identity as a princess, which in those days is bonus points. You mean I fell in love with a scullery maid, but she's actually highborn? Score! So they get married, happy ending. And this tale actually goes one step further. It gives closure on the creepy dad. Apparently, her old father king by now has literally gone crazy with guilt or sorrow after she ran away. Or maybe he just lost his mind when he couldn't find her. He ends up coming to her wedding. Don't ask me how he got an invite. Maybe neighboring royalty courtesy? He doesn't recognize her at first, but then realizes it's his daughter and he is repentant or just relieved. In some versions, he's sorry and she forgives him. You are a bigger person than me, girl. In others, it's left ambiguous or he conveniently died. The Grimm's version I recall just says the king, father, had gone mad thinking he lost her and maybe died of page, meaning no more threat. The focus is on her marrying the new king and living happily, and her father's kingdom was bereft of all its animals, but let's not talk about that. So basically, Allerleirauh is donkey skin, but German. Differences? Instead of a donkey that crabs God, we have just general wealth and emphasis on the crazy fur cloak. Instead of a fairy helping, the girl basically does it on her own cunning. And in Grimm's straightforward style, they don't dance around the incest implication. It is her biological dad. They printed that. Given they edited out incest in The Girl Without Hands, it's interesting they kept it in Allerleirauh. Maybe because it was already a known motif from Perrault's donkey skin, so they were like, people know this one. Or they wanted the lesson clear, this is unnatural and the heroine was right to flee. The Grimms even classified under tale type unnatural love. Some say these tales served as a warning to powerful men. Don't break natural law or you will lose what you love. The daughter, by fleeing, avoids sin and is rewarded with a proper marriage. So it's like a morality tale about virtue resisting corruption. Still, from the daughter's POV, yikes. The demands she makes, sun, moon, stars, dresses, have symbolic meaning, possibly representing time cycles or heavenly protection. And the fur cloak, it's as if she cloaks herself in wildness or ugliness to escape male gaze. Some feminist readings see it as a story of a woman navigating a patriarchal threat by taking on a disguise and eventually reclaiming her identity on her own terms. I can see that. She's definitely proactive. Anyway, Allerleirauh seldom gets topics nowadays. I think there's a lesser-known movie of it too. Germany made a lot of direct fairy tale films. But yeah, not exactly a standard bedtime story outside maybe some Eastern European grandmas who just bluntly read Grimm's cover to cover. If I imagine telling this casually, so the princess's dad wanted to marry her and she ran away dressed in fur, I can see a modern kid going, ew, why? And you just shrug, beats me kid, all kings were whack. Alright, let's lighten the mood from incest to something even more scary. The next story has serial killings, dismemberment, and one badass heroine. Who's up for Fitcher's Bird? Time for a grim tale that's basically a slasher film with a happy ending. Fitcher's Bird. Even the title is weird. It's sort of a variant of Bluebeard, you know, the one where the wife finds a room full of dead ex-wives. But this one goes full gruesome fantasy. So, there's this sorcerer who likes to dress up as a beggar to lure girls. a stranger danger level 100. He kidnaps a young woman, the eldest of 3 sisters, takes her to his remote house and says, "You can have anything you want here, just don't go into that one room. Here's a key for it and an egg to hold onto for some reason. I gotta run some errands. Be a good girl. Bye." Of course, curiosity gets the better of her. She opens the forbidden room and holy hell, what she sees will turn anyone's hair white. It's full of blood and dismembered body parts of previous victims. It's a literal slaughterhouse chamber. Shocked, she dropped the egg in the blood by accident. She's like, "Oh no, the egg." Girl, priorities. But the egg is magical. It's a test of obedience. It gets stained with blood that can't be washed off, marking her guilt. Sorcerer comes back, sees the bloody egg, knows she looked. He promptly chops her to pieces for disobeying. Yep, eggs, chop, dead. And he puts her remains with the others in the gore room. That escalated quickly. Then this psycho goes and tricks the second sister the same way. He probably pretends the first sister just never returned home or something, then shows up begging again, and the naive family lets him take sister number 2. It's not explicitly detailed, but essentially he serial kills the first, then moves on to the second. The second sister, trying not to scream in frustration, does the exact same thing. Curiosity, bloody chamber, dropped egg, busted, chop. Now she's in pieces too. Finally, the guy comes for the third sister. Now the third sister is our hero. She's clever and suspicious from the get-go. She accepts his hospitality, but doesn't just blindly trust him. When he leaves, she sets the egg aside carefully so she won't spoil it if she peeks. Then she goes straight to the forbidden room, because come on, you have to know what happened. She finds her sister's butchered remains. I can't fathom that moment, seeing your own sister's body parts in a basin of blood. She somehow keeps her cool, more than I would. I'd be screaming. She gathers the parts and miraculously puts them back together in the right order, I guess, and somehow brings her sisters back to life. Grimm doesn't explain the magic, but apparently just reassembling them did the trick. Or maybe she prayed or used some potion. Either way, necromancy success. The 2 sisters are alive again, probably shaken, but alive. She hides them, possibly in a basket, which comes in handy soon. Sorcerer returns. Third sister presents him a clean egg. "See, I didn't disobey. Egg is clean." He falls for it and says, "Sweet, you passed the test. You shall be my bride." Gross. He's presumably much older and, a serial killer, but she's playing along. "Oh yes, I'm so excited to marry you, you sick freak. But first, can you carry this heavy basket of gold to my family as a wedding gift? It's so heavy you mustn't stop to rest or open it on the way, or I will know." He's like, "Sure." Unknown to him, she's hidden her revived sisters inside a basket with gold on top to conceal them. And she even coaches the sisters as he carries them. If he tries to set the basket down, they are to call out, "I see you, don't stop, keep going," making him think his bride is watching magically. So picture this dude lugging a heavy basket with 2 grown women crouching inside. Down the road, huffing and puffing. Whenever he tries to rest, a voice from the basket, one of the sisters, goes, "Hey, I'm watching you, keep moving." And he's like, "Yikes! She's got eyes on me, better keep going." He probably thinks his sorcerer bride has mad powers, which she kind of does, honestly. He schleps the basket all the way to the sisters' home, his future in-laws. Once there, the sisters jump out and run inside to safety, or rather get help. Meanwhile, back at the murder house, the third sister is twiddling her thumbs. She's setting up one epic revenge prank. She takes a skull, presumably from one of his past victims, the house has plenty, and props it up at the attic window, adorning it with flowers and veil to look like a bride peering out. Then, this is the kicker, she covers herself in honey and feathers so she looks like a weird human-sized bird. Why? Because she needs to slip out unnoticed. So she essentially camouflages as I don't know, Big Bird's creepy cousin and waits outside. The sorcerer, after delivering the gold to her family, returns home with his rowdy friends for the wedding. As they approach, they see this strange feathered creature by the gate and the silhouette of a bride-like figure in the window above. They go, "Hey, Fitcher's bird." Apparently Fitcher might be the sorcerer's name, so they think it's his trained bird or something. "Where are you coming from?" And she, disguised, croaks out a riddle. "From Fitcher's house I come, quite near." "Oh, what's the young bride doing now?" The man asks. She answers, "She swept the house all through and now she's looking out the window." The guests are like, "Cool, the bride's ready and watching for us." They all march inside, including the sorcerer. But guess what? The house is empty and silent until bam! The trap is sprung. The girl's brothers and relatives, she had them alerted likely when the sisters got home, bar the doors and set the house on fire. Imagine the sorcerer's confusion, then terror, as he realizes he's been duped. He and all his wicked friends are literally burnt alive, screaming inside the house as the bird, our heroine, and her actual human allies torch the place to ashes. Vengeance served hot. And the three sisters presumably watch that place burn from a safe distance, holding hands like damn right. That's a final girl ending, if I ever heard one. The heroine's disguise gave the tale its title. Fitcher's bird refers to that feathered avenger appearance. The imagery in this story is so vivid and bizarre: a blood-stained egg that won't come clean, a basin of hacked limbs, a bride coated in honey and feathers talking to skulls and unsuspecting murderers, then a cultish mass burning. It's like Grimm meets Tarantino meets Home Alone, the booby trap revenge part. Notably, she saves herself and her sisters. No prince in shining armor here. In fact, the male lover figure is the villain, so it's almost a proto-feminist tale in that sense. Women outsmarting a killer man. I'm 100% here for that aspect. However, the gore is, well, extreme. Grimm originally published this around 1812 as well, and honestly, I'm surprised it stayed in later editions with all that gore intact. They usually trimmed some cruelty, but maybe since it's punishment for an evil sorcerer and his crew, they thought it was fine. The message is clearly curiosity can be dangerous, but cleverness and courage win the day. The first two sisters die because of curiosity, the third lived by cunning and bravery. Also, don't trust scraggly strangers offering goodies. A timeless lesson. This story is definitely not one you tell to little kids nowadays, unless your goal is to ensure they never accept an egg from strangers, or maybe never eat eggs at all, salmonella of the soul, you know. It's one of those that's more studied by folklore students than read at bedtime. I find the visual of her rolling in honey and feathers so striking. It's simultaneously grotesque and triumphant. She uses woman's wiles, housekeeping, disguise, even the notion that she's watching him magically to entrap him. Basically, turns his own weird test, the egg, against him by outsmarting it and uses trickery to get him killed. I bet movie makers could have a field day with this one, but it would be an R-rated horror thriller for sure. Alright, we've hit some heavy ones. The next one is a bit of a tonal shift. It's a classic, many know, but in its original written form, it's far darker. Are you ready to see Pinocchio in a new light? Because the original Adventures of Pinocchio makes the Disney film look like a soft lullaby. Yep, Pinocchio, that puppet boy whose nose grows when he lies. We all think of the cute Disney movie from 1940, When You Wish Upon a Star. Kindly Geppetto, adorable Jiminy Cricket, as the conscience, mischievous but lovable Pinocchio who just wants to be a real boy and eventually learns his lesson. Well, guess what? Carlo Collodi's 1883 novel The Adventures of Pinocchio is way darker, more chaotic, and Pinocchio in it, how do I put this? He's kind of a little snot for a good chunk of the story. A violent, bratty snot who gets what's coming to him, almost. Collodi originally intended it as a sort of a cautionary tale in a serial form, and boy does he lay on the caution with a hammer. Literally. The biggest shocker? Remember Jiminy Cricket, Pinocchio's friend? In the book, he's just called the Talking Cricket, and he shows up early on to give Pinocchio some good advice. And what does our wooden hero do? He gets annoyed and throws a hammer at the cricket, smashing him dead. I'm not kidding. Pinocchio straight up murders his supposed sidekick in chapter 4. The cricket's last words are literally a dying squeak. When I first read that, I gasped. Like, did Pinocchio just kill Jiminy? Yes he did. Talk about not listening to your conscience. And that's just the start. Pinocchio goes on to have a series of misadventures that are either terrifying or just sad. He's not a sweet, innocent kid. He's kind of selfish troublemaker at first. Lies, run away, gets Geppetto, who is poor and just trying his best, thrown in jail at one point because Pinocchio causes a ruckus. At one point, Pinocchio is so hungry because he left home and has nothing that he tries to roast his own feet on a stove by accident and they burn off. Geppetto has to carve him new feet. It's simultaneously darkly funny and pitiful. Then we have Mangiafuoco, the puppet master. Disney called him Stromboli. In the book, he initially wants to use Pinocchio as firewood to cook his dinner because Pinocchio ruins his puppet show. Like, literally toss him in the fire. Pinocchio is saved only because Mangiafuoco sneezes from emotion. It's a thing. In the book, when the puppet master is touched, he sneezes. Weird detail. Then of course there's the fox and the cat, con artists who convince Pinocchio to plant his gold coins in the field of miracles. In the Disney movie they are comedic and don't get too violent. In Collodi's story, when Pinocchio realizes he's been duped and refuses to give them more money, the fox and cat ambush him in the night. This scene, I remember, it gave me chills. They dress as bandits, chase him and hang Pinocchio from a tree to choke him and steal the coins. They actually lynch the puppet. Collodi intended to end the story right there, with Pinocchio hanging dead from an oak tree, as a stark lesson that bad children meet bad ends. For real, the serial originally stopped at that tragic point. The newspaper's editor later was like, dude, you can't kill the puppet. The kids are upset, please continue and revive him. Collodi did continue, but that initial ending is still in the text as a near death. Pinocchio is hanging, tongue out, almost dead. Some fairies intervene to save him so the story can go on. Basically deus ex machina, because the author had to resurrect his character due to public demand. Yes, I said fairies. Enter the blue fairy, called just a fairy with blue hair. She's not omnipotent wish granter like in Disney. She's more like a mother-sister figure who helps Pinocchio at various points, but also tests him. She rescues him from the hanging by having a crow and owl get him down. But then Pinocchio almost immediately gets into other trouble. One of the most disturbing episodes for me was The Land of Toys, aka Pleasure Island in Disney. In both versions, naughty boys get turned into donkeys as punishment for shirking school. Disney made it spooky. Those donkey transformations were traumatic to watch as a kid, not gonna lie. But Collodi's version is worse. Pinocchio and his friend Candlewick indeed turned into donkeys slowly, but then their fates are grim. Pinocchio as a donkey is sold to a circus and brutally forced to do tricks. He injures himself, lame-like, so the circus sells him to a man who wants to skin him and make a drum from his hide. I repeat, he ties a rock to donkey Pinocchio's neck and throws him into the sea to drown him, specifically to recover the carcass for leather. Holy crap. Luckily, if you can say that, underwater, fish eat the donkey flesh off and Pinocchio emerges alive in his wooden puppet self again. That scene, fish stripping his donkey form, is like body horror surreal. But at least Pinocchio escapes death by flaying. Candlewick, however, his friend, gets worked to death hauling carts, I think. Not a happy outcome for that kid. Pinocchio also accidentally bites a guy's hand off at one point, a guy trying to drown him, that same one I think. There's also an angry farmer who catches Pinocchio stealing grapes and to punish him ties him up in his yard as a watchdog, where poor Pinocchio gets attacked by weasels. It's rough. And the talking cricket? Remember, Pinocchio killed him, but the cricket's ghost later shows up as basically a spectral conscience to scold him. Because Collodi was like, okay, maybe I shouldn't have completely lost the conscience character. But even Ghost Cricket is very blunt. At one point, Pinocchio is starving and asks the cricket for food. Cricket Ghost says, oh well, you should have listened and gone to school like a good boy, then you wouldn't be starving. Tough love to the max. The climax in Collodi's story does parallel Disney's. Geppetto gets swallowed by a giant sea creature, a shark, not a whale, while looking for Pinocchio. Pinocchio eventually ends up in the shark tomb, reunites with Geppetto and helps them escape. But even that part has a twist. Inside the shark they also find the tuna fish, who was okay getting eaten because he's philosophical. Random humor bits. Pinocchio and Geppetto ride the tuna out or something bizarre like that. Collodi's tone shifts between dark and absurd all the time. Finally, Pinocchio truly reforms after all the trauma. He works hard to support old Geppetto and the ailing Blue Fairy, who was like a mother to him and fell ill. In the end, he's rewarded by being turned into a real boy, but notably it happens overnight while he's sleeping, after he's proven himself. And the wooden puppet body is seen lying lifeless while the boy Pinocchio is flesh and blood. It's both heartwarming and a bit eerie. So yeah, original Pinocchio was not messing around. Collodi wanted to show how terrible consequences await disobedient children. You could be eaten, hanged, turned into a beast of burden, starve, etc. It's practically a catalogue of don't do this or else scenarios. Some parts read like straight horror, others satirical comedy. It's a wild ride. As a kid, if I would read that, I might have actually behaved better out of sheer fear, who knows. But I also might have had nightmares of being hung or my feet burning off. Disney radically toned it down and also made Pinocchio much more innocent and lovable from the get-go. In Collodi's version, you gradually warm up to Pinocchio as he learns empathy and love through suffering. It's a more complex character arc, but man, the suffering is real. Interesting tidbit, Collodi originally killed Pinocchio at the hanging scene, as I said. The continuation with the fairy reviving him and eventual redemption was sort of an add-on because kids didn't want their anti-hero to die. Thank goodness for that. Or we would remember Pinocchio as the dark tale where the naughty puppet dies from his sins. Instead, we get the redemption arc, which is at least satisfying in the end. Pinocchio becomes good and even talking Cricket's ghost forgives him. Cricket Ghost kinda just shows up alive again at the end. He wasn't really dead, he says, maybe to not scare kids with the murder guilt. Unclear, but I think the fairy resurrected him too. There have been some more faithful adaptations recently, like that Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio on Netflix. It added its own twists, but it kept some darker tones, war setting, etc. And an Italian live-action in 2019 that actually showed the hanging scene, albeit not lethal, and the donkey transformation intimately. People were like, this is for kids? Well, it was closer to the source. So if you only know Disney's Pinocchio, the original will blow your mind. It's chaotic and creepy. But it sure isn't a tale just about telling the truth. Lying is only one of Pinocchio's many flaws. It's more about basic respect and responsibility. He had to go through hell. Nearly literally, to learn it. I still love Disney's version, but I have a soft spot for original Pinocchio because it's so unpredictable and apologetically weird. Like one chapter he's talking to a giant snake who laughs so hard at Pinocchio's misfortune that the snake literally has an aneurysm and dies. That happens. You can't make this stuff up, except Claude did, presumably after some strong espresso. Alright, from puppet nightmares we pivot to something arguably even more horrifying in a moral way. A story about vanity and cursed fashion. Hans Christian Andersen, our Danish master of melancholy, wrote a tale called The Red Shoes, published in 1845. And let me tell you, it is brutal. It's a morality tale about the sin of vanity and pride, specifically targeting fashion vanity. The story is basically: little girl likes pretty shoes. Little girl gets cursed to dance endlessly. Little girl ends up chopping off her own feet to stop. Yeah. Our protagonist is Karen, a poor orphan girl who gets adopted by a rich, stern old lady. Karen becomes obsessed with a pair of red shoes. As a poor kid, she once had crudely made red shoes at her mother's funeral, a detail which in itself is kinda sad. She wore flashy shoes to a funeral because she didn't know better. After she's adopted, she later sees fancy red leather shoes and must have them, even though it's not proper for a young girl to wear red shoes to church. In those days, it was considered vain or sacrilegious. But Karen doesn't care. She's like, I look fabulous. She ends up wearing the red shoes to church and neglecting her duties to her adoptive mom, who is visually impaired. So basically, being vain and not behaving. Enter the supernatural punishment. The red shoes are cursed by maybe an angel or a creepy soldier, depends on interpretation. In the story, a strange old soldier with a red beard enchants the shoes by saying, "Oh, what lovely dancing shoes! May you dance in them," and tapping them. Next time Karen tries to be naughty in her red shoes, she finds she cannot stop dancing. The shoes take over. Her leg prance out of control. She dances day and night through fields and woods, in rain and sun. She tries to go home. Her feet dance her to the graveyard instead. An angel appears wielding a flaming sword. Andersen was going biblical on this one, and basically condemns her. You shall dance in those shoes until you are cold and pale, aka dead, as a warning for vain children. It's terrifying, like an internal dance curse even after that. Karen can't remove the shoes, they are stuck to her. She dances to exhaustion. Imagine a little girl crying, begging for mercy, but her legs keep twirling. Finally, she sees an executioner. Yeah, just conveniently hanging out, as executioners do. She begs him to chop off her feet to break the curse. Let's that sink in. She actively seeks out being amputated because death is preferable to this cursed dancing life. Hardcore. The executioner does it. Off go both feet in the red shoes. The red shoes, with her severed feet still on them, keep dancing on their own, leaping away into the forest, still prancing. That image, someone make a horror shirt of that. It's chilling and surreal. And now Karen is left footless, bleeding. Andersen doesn't dwell on gore, but the image is clear. The executioner makes her wooden feet and crutches. You'd think lesson learned, right? But the story is not over. Even after all that, the red shoes, with her detached feet, occasionally bar her from entering the church. Like, she tries to hobble to church on wooden feet, repentant, but the cursed shoes dance in front of the door to scare her off. She basically can't go in because phantom shoes are gatekeeping. Wild. Karen ends up isolated at home, truly penitent now, praying for forgiveness, begging God for mercy with tears. After enduring much shame and sincerely repenting her vanity, she finally has a moment of grace. She has a vision of being in church, her heart lifts, and she dies. Her heart literally bursts from joy. It's implied she goes to heaven after that, as the angel reappears and forgives her since she learned her lesson. So yeah, the end. She dies, but her soul is saved. That counts as a happy ending in Andersen land. But notice that she doesn't magically get her feet back or something while alive. No miracle limb restoration for Karen. Andersen wasn't gonna let her off that easy. She pays with her life and limbs for some fancy shoes and childish arrogance. If that isn't extreme, I don't know what is. It's like, don't be vain or your feet will be cut off levels of message. This story, as you can guess, freaked people out. Even in the Victorian era, some thought Geez, Hans, this is a bit much. It definitely wasn't aimed at very young kids, more at like moral instruction for slightly older, but still. Many adaptations soften it. There's a famous 1948 film The Red Shoes, but that's about a ballerina with red pointy shoes. It's more metaphorical, though she does die dancing at the end of the film too, actually. That movie is brilliant, but it's an adult art piece, not for kids. In a lot of children's collections, The Red Shoes is either left out or retold more gently. I remember reading it around age 10 in an unabridged Andersen book and just being horrified yet to unable to look away. It's clearly got religious overtones, the idea of sacrificing the body to save the soul, something Andersen, who had a very strict religious upbringing, was working through some stuff. He often wrote about a conflict between earthly desires and spiritual salvation. The Red Shoes basically says pride and vanity equals path to damnation, humility and suffering equals path to salvation. It reflects the values of his time, but in such a graphic way that it's almost like a Grimm tale, though Grimm would have had the girl survive maybe, since Grimms more often punish the wicked and let the protagonist live after suffering. Also consider this. Andersen modeled Karen after someone in his life. It's rumored he named her after his own half-sister, whom he despised for being kind of loose and not pious. He had issues. It's also partly inspired by an anecdote where Andersen saw a rich lady order custom red shoes from his shoemaker father, but then complained they weren't fancy enough, so the concept of spoiled vanity stuck with him. The story is him basically condemning vanity in the harshest way. For modern audiences, it's a shocker. You think it's going to be about magic shoes that make you dance at a party or something cute, then it goes full Black Swan meets Saw. It definitely left my imagination scarred. The shoes dancing with her chopped feet is still inside. I mean, yikes. If you ever feel guilty about buying expensive sneakers or something, just remember, at least they are not going to drag you into a forest dancing until you get amputated, hopefully. Alright, time for our final tale on this dark journey. And it's another Andersen one. This one has a soldier, magic dogs, and one of the most cynical violent endings in fairy tales. The Tinderbox. Hans Christian Andersen's The Tinderbox was actually his first published fairy tale in 1835. It starts off almost like an Aladdin-type adventure, but ends in such bonkers, bloodbath way that it always leaves me going, wait, did the hero just do that? Spoiler, yes he did, and he faces zero consequences. Let's dig in. So, a poor soldier is walking home from war and meets an old witch on the road. She asks him to do a task. Climb into a hollow tree where there are 3 chambers underground guarded by 3 giant dogs. One with eyes as big as teacups, one with eyes like mill wheels, one with eyes like a tower. These dogs are enormous and fierce looking, but she gives him a trick. Put them on her apron and they will be tame. In each room there's a chest of coins, copper, silver, gold. He can take as much money as he wants. Woohoo! Unlimited coin loot! If only he fetches a little tinderbox from the final room for her. Soldier's like, sure, money and just a tinderbox? Sounds easy. He does it. Fills his pockets with gold, finds the tinderbox. But when he asks the witch why she wants this old tinderbox, she won't tell him. Soldier's like, suspicious. You know what he does? He cuts the witch's head off in a split-second decision. Yeah, just murders her. In his defense, she was being cagey, but that escalated fast. Now he's rich and free. He goes to the nearby city and lives large. New clothes, fancy apartment, lots of friends, the fair-weather type who love him when he's loaded. He hears about a beautiful princess locked away by her parents because an oracle said she'd marry a common soldier, and the king's like, Over my dead body, let's hide her. These piggies are soldiers' interest, of course, but he can't get to her. Soon enough, his money runs out. He was not exactly frugal, broke, and in a tiny attic, he suddenly remembers. Oh yeah, the tinderbox I took from the witch. He strikes it to light his pipe, and boom! One of the giant dogs appears, asking what he wants. Turns out striking the tinderbox summons the dog. 1 strike for the copper dog, 2 for silver dog, 3 for gold dog. Each more powerful, and they obey his orders. So now he's basically got genie-like servants, except they are huge demonic hounds with giant eyes. But they are friendly to him. He uses them to get money, like bring me more gold easy. Then he gets bold and says, you know what, bring me that princess. In the dead of night, one of the dogs carries the sleeping princess to the soldier's room. He has a little chat or creepily watches her sleep, depending on the telling, and maybe a kiss. He sends her back before dawn. This happens a second night. By then, the king and queen are like, something's off. She talks about the weird dreams of a soldier. They figure out she might actually be going somewhere. So the third night, they put bags of flour with holes on her, so she leaves a trail. The soldier's dog brings her again, but doesn't notice the trail of flour sprinkling out. Next day, the king's men follow the trail and arrest the soldier, finally caught. They throw him in jail and sentence him to death by hanging. I mean, he did kidnap the princess multiple times. Fair enough. Now, here's where things go absolutely crazy. He's on the scaffold, noose ready, execution day is a city spectacle. The soldier has one last request, to smoke a pipe. They oblige. He slyly strikes the tinderbox 3 times for all 3 dogs. Suddenly, poof! A giant demon-eyed dog appears in front of everyone. What do these dogs do? They attack the court. They attack the executioner, the judges, the royal council, biting off limbs, tossing people in the air like ragdolls. Specifically, one grabs the judge by the legs, another bites the councillor's nose. They flying them sky high and let them split down. It says they fell to the ground broken to pieces. The king and queen are like, stop this at once. The king even yells, I won't have this. But the dog promptly grabs both the king and the queen and throws them too, presumably killing them on the spot. Yes, the king and queen, although their main crime was being overprotective parents, get straight up murdered by magic dogs at their daughter's would-be execution. That escalated to regicide real fast. The crowd is horrified one moment, but then basically goes, well, our royals are splattered and the scary dogs are on this guy's side, so you know what? Long live the soldier, I guess. They literally cheer that the soldier should be king now. He marries the princess, who apparently is cool with all this. And the dogs join the wedding feast, staring with their big eyes as everyone celebrates. The end. What the? Our hero just brutally slaughtered the entire government and in-laws and gets to take the throne. And Andersen writes it kind of cheery at the end, like yay, the soldier gets rewarded and even the dogs are happy. It's darkly comedic and satirical, no doubt, kinda showing that might makes right, or that fortune favors the bold or the ruthless. Honestly, I think Andersen was parodying the traditional fairy tale structure here, like giving a deliberately morally ambiguous ending. Because usually fairy tales punish greed and reward virtue. Here, the soldier is greedy, killed the witch for being secretive about the tinderbox, which she kind of had reasons not to give him because look what he did with it. He's also immoral, kidnapping the princess, then mass murder, but he gets away with everything and is celebrated. As a kid reading this, I was confused. Wait, is he a good guy? Should I be happy he's king? The story doesn't question it, it just goes, well, he's king now, happily ever after. It's so cynical. Some analysts say Andersen was poking at how arbitrary social status is. A poor soldier can't end up king by chance or violence. Also maybe a little revenge fantasy against authorities. The soldier is almost executed unjustly from his POV, so he turns the tables dramatically. The violence is cartoonish, but definitely not for toddlers. I mean, a dog literally throwing people until they are broken to pieces, that phrase stuck with me. And the image of the dogs with eyes like full moons or whatever rampaging is both frightening and darkly funny. In many children's adaptations, they tone it down. Often the king sees the dog and is so scared he offers the soldier to marry the princess instead of fighting. Or the soldier just scares them and they surrender. But Andersen originally explicitly says the king and queen get killed violently. He had a bit of a cruel streak in some tales, and this one he played for shock and maybe black humor. Not moralizing like the red shoes, but rather lack of moral, or the moral is: it's a wild world, kids, sometimes the murderer wins. It actually reminds me of how some Grimm tales ended abruptly with the baddies killed and the protagonist on top without any reflection. Except here the protagonist is morally grey. The Tinderbox is essentially a mashup of Aladdin, a magic servant riches, and Bluebeardish elements. Curiosity with the Tinderbox, but ends like a Quentin Tarantino scene. I kind of love it for being so unabashedly chaotic. Imagine a parent reading it now. And then the dogs ate the judges and killed the king and queen, haha, okay, bedtime. No way. Parents would be editing on the fly. And then the king was so grateful to the soldier for not harming him that he said, "Marry my daughter and be king," the end. But that's not what Hans wrote. One last note, the Tinderbox's violence also has a class commentary. The soldier is common, the king is elite. Andersen came from poverty and often wrote sympathy for underdogs, Little Mermaid, etc. Here, the underdog literally becomes a top dog by unleashing dogs on the top dogs. Wow, that's a lot of dogs. So maybe there's a hidden revolutionary spirit, the soldier representing the common folk, overthrowing a rigid monarchy by force and taking power. If you frame it that way, it's almost political commentary couched in absurd fairy tale. Whatever the case, it's a hell of an ending to a fairy tale lineup. Not a gently moral or a sweet wedding with everyone content. Well, it is a wedding, but half the guests are dead. It leaves you a bit stunned, maybe laughing nervously. Okay, that was a lot. We just went from a princess hiding under 1,000 furs to a sorcerer's murder house to Pinocchio's original nightmare arc to cursed shoes that do not let you live, and finally to a tinderbox that basically turns into a full-on chaos weapon. And what always gets me is this. Fairy tales were never just cute stories. A lot of them were warnings, or shock entertainment, or a way for people to process fear, violence, temptation, power, and the most uncomfortable human taboos, all wrapped in fantasy so you could swallow it. Do I think kids today should hear these versions as bedtime stories? Absolutely not. Do I think adults should know them? Honestly, yes. Because once you see the original roots, you start noticing how much we've softened the world just to make it feel safe. Now, I need to know, which one messed you up the most? Was it the serial killer vibes of Fitcher's bird? Pinocchio straight up murdering the talking cricket? The rituals imagery that's going to haunt you forever? Or the Tinderbox ending where the hero becomes the king through pure magical dog violence? Drop your pics in the comments, and if you know a fairy tale that's even darker than these, I want it. I will read it. And I will suffer with you. And hey, if you enjoyed having your childhood memories gently set on fire, give this video a like, it helps more people to find this weird dark corner of fairy tale history. Subscribe for more dark folklore, myth and creepy lore. I promise it's not always horror, but it's almost always delightfully unhinged. Sweet dreams, or at least interesting ones.